Imagine a world where the thing that keeps you alive trades like oil. A mother in California turns on her tap, a soft click, a metallic hiss. She doesn't know that somewhere in Manhattan, men in tailored suits are betting on that drop of water, its scarcity, its price, its future. On Wall Street, they call it liquidity. But in the drought-stricken valleys of the West, liquidity means life. Every flick of a trading screen ripples across the desert. Every number rising on a futures chart means another farmer's field going dry. This isn't science fiction. It's Wall Street's newest market, water futures. In 2020, for the first time in history, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the same institution that trades oil, wheat, and gold, opened the door for investors to buy and sell the right to water. The thing your body is 60% made of just became another financial instrument, because when the world runs dry, profit doesn't. So why is water, the oldest, purest symbol of life, now priced like a barrel of crude? Who gets rich when people go thirsty? And what happens when survival itself becomes a stock ticker? Hey, welcome to the history of debt, where money, power, and survival collide. Because if the price of water can be traded, what part of life is left that can't? California, 2012 to 2020. 8 years of drought turned lakes into ghost mirrors and rivers into veins of cracked clay. Farmers watched the sky like gamblers watch a roulette wheel praying for rain, hedging against nothingness. Water was no longer guaranteed. It was rationed, auctioned, fought over. And in the heart of this chaos, Wall Street saw something it understands perfectly: scarcity. The Chicago Mercantile Exchange introduced the NASDAQ VELS California Water Index Futures, a way to bet on the price of water rights in California. Each contract represented 10 acre-feet of water, about enough to fill 5 Olympic swimming pools. To the finance world, it was innovation. To everyone else, it was the beginning of something quietly terrifying. Screens flickered with symbols once reserved for oil and gold: WTR, vol, lick, water. A sacred shared resource was reborn as a speculative asset. Farmers, already drowning in debt, now faced a new reality. To plant crops, they might have to compete with hedge funds, because in this new market, whoever could afford the contract owned the future. Water used to belong to everyone, one California farmer said. Now it belongs to whoever can afford the futures contract, from sacred resource to financial asset. At its core, a futures market is simple. You're betting on the future price of something. You lock in a deal today to profit when tomorrow runs dry. It's how airlines hedge against fuel prices, how bakeries protect against rising wheat costs, and now how investors profit from the weather. But water isn't wheat. It isn't oil. You can live without gold. You can't live without water. That difference changes everything. On Wall Street, when scarcity hits, numbers rise. On Main Street, when scarcity hits, people suffer. Imagine a trader in New York smiling as drought spreads through the Central Valley. Every parched acre, every dry riverbed adds another digit to his gains. This isn't evil in the cartoon sense. It's math. But math can be cruel when it's built on human thirst. In this system, the rich bet on scarcity and the poor pay the price. Hedge funds have begun mapping aquifers like oil reserves, scanning for underground profit. Satellite imagery, AI models, rainfall algorithms, all tracking the next big shortage. Because where there's scarcity, there's money. And when the market discovers that your thirst is predictable, it will trade it. Water futures are supposed to help farmers hedge risk, but like all markets, they grow beyond their purpose. Soon, speculators join in not to manage water, but to gamble on it. And in that gamble, something sacred breaks. Behind the curtain, the real power doesn't sit in California's fields. It sits in glass towers, where funds with names like Blue Horizon Capital and Liquid Assets Management quietly buy up water rights, farmland, and even entire aquifers. Billionaires call it agricultural investment. But when a billionaire buys farmland, he isn't buying crops. He's buying the rivers beneath. Across the U.S., private equity firms now own vast tracts of land, not for what grows above, but for what flows below. In Australia, global investors already dominate the water rights market, treating water like stocks. And in Africa, corporations are fencing off rivers that sustained villages for centuries. Everywhere you look, the same pattern. Public becomes private. Need becomes product. Life becomes leverage. Companies like Nestlé have long argued that water is not a human right. It is a food product. Their bottled water empire thrives on scarcity, buying access to springs for pennies, selling it back by the liter. Now, finance is joining the game. The language of liquidity has turned literal. Funds call it blue gold. Analysts call it the next trillion-dollar market. But what they're really selling is control. In America, a land built on freedom, the resource that built civilization is being sold back to you, gallon by gallon, at whatever price the market decides. Freedom, it seems, now comes with a water bill. They said water was free, Then they said water was public. Now they say water is a market. Pause on that. If survival itself becomes a tradable commodity, what's left of morality? Every empire in history fought for water. Ancient Mesopotamia's wars began over rivers. Rome built aqueducts to control it. And now, in our digital empire, algorithms do the same, fighting not with swords, but spreadsheets. The tools changed. The instinct didn't. When Wall Street prices water, it isn't just predicting drought, it's deciding who can afford to survive it. Markets justify themselves with efficiency. They say pricing water makes it valuable, makes people conserve. But conservation built on profit is just rationing by wealth. When money defines access, ethics become optional. Imagine a city where every glass of water is linked to a futures contract, where a drought isn't just a tragedy, it's an opportunity, where every human necessity becomes another data point in a billionaire's portfolio. The moral crisis isn't coming, it's here, disguised as innovation. And in the quiet between every trade, something ancient in us begins to break. Because once survival has a price, humanity has a limit. Let's project forward. A decade from now. Global warming accelerates, rivers thin, the Colorado runs shallow, states begin to fight over every cubic meter. Water becomes political currency. Nevada sues California, Texas hoards aquifers, Arizona goes dry. Meanwhile, hedge funds build water portfolios, buying rights across multiple regions like a diversified survival strategy. The future, they say, belongs to those who control the flow. And when Wall Street enters a market, it doesn't leave quietly. It scales, automates, optimizes, until your tap becomes a terminal. A new kind of capitalism emerges, hydrocapitalism, where your monthly bill isn't just utilities, it's exposure. In this world, you won't pay for water, you'll subscribe to it, just like Netflix, but for survival. Your tier decides your access. Premium users get unlimited clean water. The rest wait for their rationed flow to refresh. Sound far-fetched? It's already happening. In some countries, water utilities are fully privatized, owned by global firms. And when profits drop, prices rise. Scarcity becomes strategy, because in a system built on growth, even drought becomes a business model. In this future, rivers aren't rivers. They're data streams. Rain isn't a miracle. It's a market event. And the people, the ones who once sang for rain, now watch it traded like currency. We thought the climate crisis would unite us. Instead, it's dividing us by liquidity. Because in a thirsty world, whoever owns the water owns life itself. For centuries, wars were fought for land, oil, and gold. But the next empire won't rise from the earth. It'll flow from your faucet. The idea that something so essential, so elemental, could be speculated upon tells us everything about the age we live in. We built systems that measure worth in scarcity, not abundance. We turned protection into profit, and we convinced ourselves it's progress. But here's the truth. Markets don't stop at logic. They stop at limits. And water, unlike oil, has no substitute. This story isn't about traders or farmers or even policy. It's about the quiet line between civilization and collapse, and how easily we trade it for convenience. Because every trade, every contract, every innovation on Wall Street is, at its core, a story about belief. Belief that value can be created from anything, even thirst. But what if the moment we priced water, we crossed a line that can't be unpriced? Somewhere tonight, a family turns on the tap and fills a glass. Somewhere else, a trader watches the same flow in numbers. Two worlds, one resource. And between them, a market that measures the distance between survival and profit. If this made you think twice before turning on the tap, don't just watch, think, share, subscribe. Because here, on the history of debt, we expose the price of everything, especially the things that were supposed to be free.